listen, I think when you do this for a living, and especially on Broadway, where people come and pay a lot of money to be entertained and to maybe be happy and escape the real world, I totally understand that. My entire career, and I'm so grateful for this, in my childhood, to be honest, I started singing to make people happy, honestly, deeply. And I started singing as a service to others, whether it be in weddings or funerals or church or whatever, or even in my home. And my husband always has said this wonderful thing, go spread the joy. Yeah. And so often in my career, it's exactly what I feel like I want to do. Whether it's a solo concert or The King and I or South Pacific, or go spread the joy. And at the beginning of this whole process, he was like, go spread the joy of alcoholism.
Well, first, as we get started here, I just want to say that Days of Wine and Roses, the musical, and your performances will remain as top 10 for me that I've ever witnessed on the New York stage.
That's very nice. Thank you.
And I've been going to the theater since I was 10, but there's just something about this show and your performances together really brilliant. Kelli, take us back to the beginning of how the idea of turning Days of Wine and Roses into a musical came about.
Well, working with him again is how it came about. We had just closed Sweet Smell of Success in June of 2002. And because of the closure, I took a job out at Sundance, Utah in a workshop of something, the theater lab out there, something crazy. And there was this other lab going on of this new Adam Guettel musical called The Light in the Piazza, and they needed an extra singer. So they put me over in that one too, and I did both these projects. And then I started to understand who Adam Guettel was and what he had written. Rocco! Oh my gosh! Okay, I'll talk about that in a minute. So I thought, gosh, this is a person who's writing. I really was trying to find my place in this business because I was an opera major, wanted to be in musical theater. And this guy was writing this just avant-garde, intelligent, ahead of its time music. And so we started talking about projects, and I wanted to work with Brian again so badly. And we started talking about Days of Wine and Roses because of the era. We had just come out of Sweet Smell, same era, same look, same feel, that dark thing. I wanted more of it. I wanted to have it again. And, then we went away, and Adam kind of took it and thought about it. And 10 years later, we had one song, and 5 years later, we had half of a thing. We started working on it a long time ago, reading, doing little workshops. And it took 21 years. Not because it took that long, but because you put things in the back of your head. You don't even look at them for 7 years or something. But anyway, Adam really, to his credit, did it. And he then paired up again with Craig Lucas. So it's a Light in the Piazza reunion.
I love it. Brian, when did you get involved?
When Kelli asked me, when it came to, upon her radar, I think, as she said, I think she was always imagining this as a possibility. And so I remember vaguely just having a conversation, you saying, hey, there's this thing, would you think about doing a musical version of Days of Wine and Roses? And I had worked with Adam Guettel before on Floyd Collins, so I had a relationship with him personally and professionally, and was just a huge fan. So that was not. It didn't take very much for me to say, "Wow, that's an incredible idea." So I would say right from the beginning. At least, when Kelli brought it to my attention.
I should ask him first. I'm going to have this musical done. Will you do it? I
think for moving forward, you can always just say that I'll be doing anything that you do. I should be so lucky.
With the roles of Kirsten and Joe, we got to see warts and all, the highs and lows and everything in between. Would you each tell us what these roles meant to each of you? Kelli, the role of Kirsten.
When we were talking about this, I was 26 years old. Yeah. And I remember wanting to learn to be a better actor. I wanted to risk and see where I could go with that sort of thing. And there were, at the time, the roles offered to me, or the ones that I was suited for, which I love, were Ingenue, Rodgers and Hammerstein, something new, maybe Susan Hunsaker in Sweet Smell of Success, things like that. And I was getting that feeling of wanting to sink my teeth in deeper. And this particular role had a lot to offer in that world. Not just that she goes on this alcoholic journey, but I wasn't a mother at the time. This woman is a mother. That love story, that fierce love story that's really rocky and up and down and not so perfect. That the show doesn't end in a wedding, which would have been a first for me. I was always having a wedding at the end of the show and we all live happily ever after, That all appealed to me. But then to add sort of the way I express musically, which Adam can write so beautifully, just felt to me like it was asking of me as much as I could do, or maybe more at the time that I thought I could do. And we should always do that. We should always go one step more than what we have done or proved to ourselves, so that we can go on and advance, right? To just stay here or back here, it doesn't advance us, doesn't keep us curious in life or as artists. And so it was. I knew then and there it was going to ask of me something I didn't know if I could do. And so I'm so grateful that I finally got the chance to try.
Yeah. Brian, for you.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on what you're saying because it's a similar thought for me. I think the word that comes to mind is abandon. Yeah. And the idea of looking at this character and this story and what Kirsten and Joe are asked to do as concoctions of characters devised by Adam and Craig. If you look at it on the page and you have a template for it, which of course we did with the movie, you know that this is a descent into some pretty dark territory, just psychologically, emotionally, all of the things that go along with telling this tale of addiction and love. And so I think having had the experience of getting a taste with really great shows and really great pieces that asked a lot of me. Once you have that taste, you like you just said, you want to see what else you can do, and the requirement for this was asking so much in terms of the commitment and the overcoming of my own fear of feeling like can I do this in a way that is compelling, dramatic, and also honest in the depiction of an alcoholic, and trying to understand all of those things, which was a challenge and a puzzle to figure out. But mostly the sense of abandon that comes with not only just the inebriation that comes with being drunk and out of sorts, your what alcohol does to you, but also just on top of that, and probably more importantly, is just the desires of the heart to overcome challenge and addiction, and in this case, try to hold on to this extraordinary love story.
You said 20 years, to bring this musical to fruition, and like 10 years ago when they actually started the meat of writing it for both of you. I always say there's a reason why certain things take so long. Do either of you think that you could have played these roles earlier in your careers when this was first talked about 20 years ago?
It's interesting. I just, I've been thinking about this and addressed it recently. No. I mean, the thing of it is that you want to, as a young person, you want to just leap and you're fearless.
Yeah.
But there was so much life experience in the last 20 years that I feel so grateful to have been able to lean on and add to what was happening across the street, in our show, about especially being a parent, more lived experience with alcoholism or addiction around me, losing friends during the pandemic to these things. You realize things sort of happen at the time they're supposed to happen. And that's incredibly evident to me, that you might ask for something and it might not happen for a long time, but it doesn't mean it's not going to. And then when it does, you think, this is all, it should have always happened just this way. That's how this has felt.
Yeah. Brian, for you, do you think you could have tackled this role of Joe?
It could have, but it would have been a shallow swim. I think if you were to ask me in 20 years, if I feel like I could have played that role now, I probably would say I was just scratching the surface when I'm doing it now. So it's the kind of story and the kind of character that I think does require some miles on the wheels in terms of your own experience with love and loss and challenge and all the things in life that are really, really hard to just accept and to wade through and to come out either on top of or making peace with. I mean, that's what life is. And so the longer you live, the more experiences you have where you're put to that challenge. So I think all of that has served us well in that sense of having more miles.
Yeah.
Not to go off topic, but I just have a really short example. When I played Clara in The Light in the Piazza, I always struggled with her because I wanted her to be so real. And I researched blunt trauma injury to the head and how someone would behave. And we did the reunion concert. I was just turning 40. And I said to myself, oh, I finally figured out how to play Clara. I just let go. It was so much simpler than that. She was so much more of a vessel for love and for hope and for thought. And at whatever I was in my 20s, I struggled. I fought that so much. I fought letting it be simple and on the breath, So yeah, sometimes that's why I hope that the work continues and gets exciting. I mean, I think in our business, we need to embrace that more and the possibility as you get older and what you can add to character because of the lives lived, the years.
That's a really good point. I feel like everything that we're talking about in terms of the emotional lives that these characters have and what we can bring to it because of the lives that we have lived, you can't forget the fact that what you're doing is acting.
Yeah.
And so, 20 years from now, perhaps I will be better at just saying, oh, well, I don't have to work so hard here. It's like you're just saying, the revelation of letting go and not getting in the way of a moment or a character because you have preconceived notions or you've done all your homework and you really know the inner workings of this person psychologically, etc. But the truth is that the technique that you have to employ to get this across is a never-ending education as well. So that is a constant. That is a constant state of evaluation. 20 years ago, it was different than how I attack things now and what I'm capable of doing now because of my confidence, my experience, whatever the case may be. It's just a different way of learning how to act.
Because I want to talk to you about trust. The two of you work so beautifully in this musical. How magical and exhilarating was it sharing the stage together, and talk about the trust you had for one another, because the emotional journey that they took us on in Days of Wine and Roses, how you were able to do that from where you started as characters in this show to where it ends. It's really personal and emotional. So talk about the trust you had with each other.
It is the highlight of this experience, getting to sit here with Kelli, who I haven't seen in 3 weeks or so, and after being together, in the trenches doing this thing. And the highlight and the pinnacle of an experience is to really, really be invested with someone who is like-minded and shares the same approach, intent, desires. That is and was the best part, is just being able to do this hand in hand with an extraordinary artist like Kelli.
Oh my goodness, thank you. I love the question. It almost makes me emotional. Because I know more than anything I've ever done, any project, many personal relationships, anything, I felt like this for me. It's been hard to explain. Maybe someday I can put it down in words better. It felt like a joyous free fall. With never a chance of landing, unsafely. For me, the whole time, as opposed to playing Clara when I was fighting against it. It's not that I'll not be, 20 years from now looking back and saying, oh gosh, I could have done so many things differently, and I will. But for the first time in my career, trusting the material, first of all, knowing that it was written from pure honesty and by people who know, but then stepping onto a stage every night and more than any other collaboration, just leaping and knowing. I said this over and over again because we talk about people would say, are you okay? Are you exhausted? I'd be like, thanks. I felt like nothing had ever been easier in my life. I don't know if it was a combination of not having to overthink the sing because it was finally written for things that I do, which are odd, but especially every choice I made, every risk I took, just right there with me, right, catching me. Every mistake I made, picking up the piece. Yeah. I just never questioned it. I didn't walk off going, oh, I wonder if he's mad that I cut him off, I just didn't. It's just the most unconditional thing. And I do think it's because we're like-minded. I do think it's because we care deeply about each other on the stage in a way that we want each other to succeed. I think that sometimes cannot be there. I've been lucky in my career to work with good collaborators, but I know that we wanted each other to succeed and each other to tell the story as deeply and as true as the other did. And when you trust somebody like that, it's so freeing, because not only would I be worrying about my own performance and what you might think of it, I might worry if it was good enough for him or if he was judging it or felt like I wasn't passing the ball. I didn't feel that way. I felt like he was going to accept anything I gave. And believe me, when you do 8 shows a week, there's a day that you come in with on top of the world. There's a day you come out, you're the worst of yourself, and you just have to be ready to catch. And my gosh, it was like I said, it was a free fall with an absolute parachute and in him. And I want to do that forever. I think the sadness I have is that I worry that it won't happen again, because that's how great it felt. I never wanted it to end. It was the easiest job of my life in the most challenging role of my life. Can't explain it.
Yeah.
If I could just add too, I think we both had the reverence that we both had for the material and the knowledge that what we were going to do and what we got to do was, I think we both felt a deep sense of responsibility of delivering this kind of majestic, complex thing that Adam and Craig had created. So the image I'm seeing right now is just the two of us standing at the bottom of this mountain, and just wanting to say, okay, we got to do this. We got to climb this thing. We don't know how we're going to get there, but we're going to do it. So anyway, just the reverence of the thing that you're doing is a great motivator to kind of hold each other's hands to get the job done correctly.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned free, because when I watched them in the show, it's like I knew the emotional journey they had to go through this thing, but you both had a freeness up there just to open up and explore all this stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. More than anything, more than ever, without the drama of ego that's how I think I can say that freely about. There's a great humility in performing or living in art that feels that special. It might not be the most commercial thing, but it feels to an artist or whoever you are or whatever you are, someone who likes to communicate and talk about human stories and live in them and breathe in them. There's such a beauty to having that responsibility and seeing if you can be up to it, and it makes you humble because you feel like it's a great honor.
Yeah. And
I feel like we felt honored to do it together and to understand it and to get to understand it together. And it feels like such a gift because it makes you really grateful,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the brilliance of Adam Guettle's score and book writer Craig Lucas. This was such a wonderful collaboration of them working together, and all 4 of you sort of working together also, because you two had a lot of input during the 10 years when it was actually being written, right? Talk about them first. Talk about Adam and Craig, the genius of the two of them putting this piece together.
Well, I hadn't worked with Adam and Craig as a team like Kelli had, so... And I, of course, knew who Craig Lucas was and was very excited that he was a part of this. And right from the very beginning, Craig brings kind of an electric, undeniable, open heart. The biggest, most open heart of any artist I think I've ever worked with, in a way that can be very intimidating, because if that is the standard by which this thing is being put out into the world, at whatever state of the development it is, you know that this person is interested in nothing other than the purest of the truth that you could find in any given moment. And on top of that, you're dealing with a subject matter that I personally, didn't have the insights that Craig or Adam have or may have had to lend to any particular moment in the show. So to have that kind of collaboration and to be trusted to be the purveyor of this story was a great gift. So that collaboration was or to have been entrusted with that collaborative process was really great.
Yeah, I think that they've been very vocal. I mean, we have two writers who have both struggled with alcohol and addiction their whole lives, and Craig is 18 years sober. One of the things that I think is really beautiful and important to point out about the two of them writing this is that they, being who they are and the lives they've lived, they were never going to speak for a community of people. They were going to tell a story about two, and not to represent a whole by any means, because they are two people who do not represent a whole. And the behavior of people who struggle, the behavior of people who live with people who struggle, they could not possibly represent that. And the visceral reactions that came from audience members, I think, came because the stories that they wrote, not necessarily our performances of them, but the story they wrote was so based on truth, a truth that they knew, maybe an amalgamation of a gazillion people they've known, themselves, their families, whoever it is, that all of that was so honest and often probably risked what might be commercial or, hey, let's fix the ending. She comes home and they live happily. No, never, but little things in there that just had to be true and honest, and no moving that. No sacrifices. No sacrificing for the sake of again, commerciality or whatever that is. So I think that these two people were just determined to just tell an honest, small, human story that sort of represented some of their experience, lived experience, and just knowing that we were the vessels of that, and to know that they trusted us in that, and to have these closed, private, secure rooms where someone was always taking a trip down memory lane or going to a deeper place, that all builds something really honest and beautiful. And it felt like a performance only in that there were people there to share it with us, but otherwise it felt like this intimate experience that we were just all having together in the theater. And I think that's because the play was written on real life, period. Yeah.
Because these roles fit you like a glove. Not that other roles didn't, but there was just something particularly about this show. And you two collaborated with them too, like going through the script every now and then. Like you had input into this, didn't you both?
You know what, I think there was in the beginning there's a lot of conversation about the era we're putting this in. So whatever hangups we might have had about certain, would a woman ever say that? Or would a man, this is the era we're in, or something like that. I do think that they heard me when it came to a mother being the woman in the room. I really needed to use my voice that way because, you had these two male writers. And there's always, if you're in a good room, there's always going to be collaboration and conversation and movement. And sometimes you push against each other, and sometimes you realize that was the right thing. So there's lots of that. That's the way you end up with a product where you feel free.
Yeah. Because
you're not actually in any moment feeling like I'm false here. I'm saying something I don't believe in, So yeah, there was a lot of collaboration.
I would say most of the collaboration that comes to mind for me really is a question of technique and finesse of the technical aspects of, make no mistake, Adam and Craig built this machine and it's all of its complexity and glory we're the persons that are trying to kind of, bring it to life. And so I think like smart people, they're going to say, the people that have to put it on display, for lack of a better term, how does that fit for you? Can you do that? And if this is coming up short here, what is it that's making you feel that way? Those kinds of conversations to get the real finesse of the gesture, the real finesse and the truth of the moment, that's where I think part of their genius is just kind of listen and watch. And Michael Greif too. I mean, make no mistake, he's there to kind of let us just fail miserably and just say, okay, these 3 things out of these 100 things worked. Let's use those 3 and build from there. So that's the kind of stuff that I feel is oftentimes you never really. It's happening all the time, and it has such an impact. But it's you're lucky because it's at a certain point just becomes a given that that's going to happen, and it's not always the case.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your wonderful director, Michael Greif. I mean, he's one of the most sought-after directors. What makes Michael so special, and what made him so special for the two of you with working on this musical?
I think Michael's a great dramaturg. Yeah. I mean, I think when he came into this process, you have 2 writers putting a lot of themselves down, right? And then how do you put that together and make a cohesive thing with transitions and, make the drama move in the right direction? And Michael comes in and has this eye and this ear and this, just the way about himself that is very specific. I mean, you can see it in his shows. You can see what he likes. And in this case, there was a lot of that, but I also felt in Michael, which was very generous, I think, for our show at least, I felt a pullback in Michael. He was, of course, there's a lot that goes on between the writers and the director, and then they sort of bring it to us to look at, like, we should cut this, we should add a line here, and then they bring it to us to see how that's going to work. But in the room of building this, like on a prop bed or a prop table or, holding prop glasses, I really felt like Michael was not controlling. He was not the kind of person who said, I have a vision and that's going to be the way it goes, which was incredibly, it was the way it should be. Yeah. But as directors go, it was generous. And that's what he did. Brian and Kelli, what would you do with this? And looking at it and then definitely saying, this is better. That was a good choice, not that. So in this particular way, I think he was very minimalistic and more allowing. And that's not always what you get. And I think that's why we built it together.
Yeah.
The 5 of us really, and Kim Grigsby musically. I think that's why the 6 of us sort of built it together, because there was a lot of, well, let's see what happens first, a little bit, especially in the book scenes and stuff. I'll just say this, I'll just throw this in there. With Adam, one of the reasons why Adam's thing is so compelling and often mysterious, and God, how did he choose that? I think it's because in large part, and I don't think I'm telling a secret, I think Adam writes different parts of himself.
Yeah.
I'm one half, Brian's another half, Kirsten's one half, things like that. So with Adam, that's a little harder to kind of shift and change because it's so personal, I think. And so you deal with those types of things. You deal with something that is so personal, and whether it can be moved or not. And then you deal with Craig, who said, okay, let's try something else. And you have a new line in 5 minutes. And then you have Michael, who said, let's see how it plays out. Yeah. And then toward the end, we start to put the pieces together. So it was a wonderful, scary and then all at the same time freeing room.
Yeah, this is just striking me, that sense of ownership that Michael allowed us to have.
Yeah.
We got to own who Joe and Kirsten were, and it wasn't always right, but I think by allowing us to have such a hold on what our instincts were and how we saw this, in our efforts in a rehearsal space, I think that goes a long way of establishing that trust that you're talking about, that I think Kelli and I have naturally just as friends, with Water Under the Bridge for 20 years, but also as when it comes time to play the characters, if you've been given a sense that what you're doing is something that the powers that be have sanctioned, then that gives you a sense of ownership and allows you to be, I think, perhaps more fearless than usual.
I like that. Trust, freedom, and fearlessness. I love it. That's what you were given with this show.
You know, sometimes you get a chance to fix something.
Yeah.
And my first experience with Brian, I'll say it out loud, felt like a straitjacket. Not Brian. Brian, the scenes I had with him were joyous. The role I was playing, the way it went down, I still liken that to being in a straitjacket and not knowing how to speak for myself. And it feels like it's come full circle. And I like healed that part of myself with the same actor in a different show. But I took the piece I wanted to take with me. I really do. I think I'm speaking that out loud for the first time. I wanted to fix something that I've held on to for a long time about what it means to have a voice in a room, have a voice in a collaboration. And I took with me the partner that I could trust to do that, but it feel almost like I was making amends to myself. And that's what Days of Wine and Roses has felt like.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Though there are other characters in the show, there's an AA sponsor, Kirsten's stern father. Adam Gettle chose to have only Kirsten, Joe, and occasionally their daughters sing. He said, for me, it was the most important piece that I've ever done in that sense, that I could really sculpt this for these two great artists. How does that make both of you feel?
Again,
I mean, you don't always get that.
No, and you don't always get it from people that you just think hung the moon. You know, so I'm a big Adam Gettle fan. So to hear that is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I feel the same. I've been pinching myself forever.
Yeah. I know this musical connected very personally to audience members. It did the nights that I was there. Talk about meeting audience members after the show and the impact this show had on them when you were signing autographs or talking to people after the show.
There were so many ways that showed itself. A lot were very profound and moving. People sharing their stories of sobriety and addiction. People's reactions varied. You know, I've never done a show where sometimes people didn't know how to react, and that took a while for me to kind of figure out how to respond to that. And I got very good at realizing I can't take care of someone's reaction to this story, whatever that reaction is. If it's muted, who knows why? If it's I think usually people were just a lot of times, not usually. A lot of times there are moments where people just didn't know how to respond to it, and there's all kinds of ways you can fill in the blanks there. And that's a fool's errand because you just don't know. But I guess the lesson that I learned was this show does have an impact. Undeniably, there's an impact here, and sometimes it's impossible to articulate that from a person who's experienced it, and it's certainly impossible for me to try to help this person articulate it. It's not my job to do that after the show, and that took a while to learn. Yeah, my instinct is to want to say, like, it's okay, we can talk about something else and kind of move things along and be keep the party going. But after a while, it's like, no, I don't have to say anything. I did my job. You had your experience, and that's good enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you do this for a living, and especially on Broadway, where people come and pay a lot of money to be entertained and to maybe be happy and escape the real world, I totally understand that. My entire career, and I'm so grateful for this, in my childhood, to be honest, I started singing to make people happy, honestly, deeply. And I started singing as a service to others, whether it be in weddings or funerals or church or whatever, or even in my home. And my husband always has said this wonderful thing, go spread the joy. Yeah. And so often in my career, it's exactly what I feel like I want to do. Whether it's a solo concert or The King and I or South Pacific, or go spread the joy. And at the beginning of this whole process, he was like, go spread the joy of alcoholism. And recently, at the beginning of this month, he said to me, and we can laugh, sort of, right? Because it's the story of your life where you go, wait a second, what's my purpose in life? And it really started getting to me because right now I find myself up at the Met. He said, he was being, sort of dark. He's like, go spread the joy of suicide. And I realized for about a year and a half or two, I've been really playing these women whose stories need to be told.
Yeah.
And I think when people make art, you have to remember it's not just the people doing art or the people receiving art. The people who make the art are trying to work through something. They're trying to make answers out of confusion. This is what it was for. That's what it's formed. Right now, there are 1 billion people sitting somewhere writing a poem or drawing a piece of art or making a song or walking along looking at the cloud structures. It's all art. It's all making something out of a question or a confusion or a feeling, right? We're putting it down. And so my point in saying that is I've had sort of this what felt like a purpose in my life of making art to make people happy. And there's a part of me that wants to say, but this one was for me. This was, and it feels selfish. It felt for a minute, I had to kind of question myself, what are you doing? Because I would meet people who needed it.
Yeah.
Oh, every night I would have someone who needed it. I needed this. I was so cathartic. This was me as a child, or I was Kirsten. I've been sober for 34 years, or I almost left or my mom left, it was something that people needed to share in. So it wasn't a joy, but it was you're not aloneness. But as an actor, as someone who wants to be an artist, to wrench myself, to feel everything I could feel in one 90-minute period, to sing at the top of my voice or my skill or whatever it was, that brought joy to me. If it could bring catharsis, the story itself, to others, that's wonderful. But I also know it was hard for people. But honestly, it's hard for me too. But in a way, that feeling alive part is joyous to me. And I want there to be, on any stage, in any place that offers up art, I want there to be a smorgasbord. So tomorrow, go see The Heart of Rock and Roll. And today, see Days of Wine and Roses. And the next day, go see Corruption. And the next day, you know what I'm saying? There should be, as producers, produce Hamilton and then go produce, Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Do it so that there's something for everybody to feel that joy, whatever brings them joy, or at least satisfaction, or just at least to feel. Yeah. That's what it's about. And so I'm so proud of this from the standpoint of it's an offering that somebody needs. Yeah. And it might just be one person. But the responses were enormous for my heart. Enormous. It was more than I'd ever. I love making people smile, but to make people feel is, I think, what the purpose really is.
Yeah. I know a lot of people, they realized, I have a drinking problem, I'm going to stop or whatever. But, great theater, that's the great thing about Broadway. A lot of people over the years said Broadway is dead. Broadway will never die. There's always going to be periods where it goes up and down. But what was great about this show and everything else, there's something for everybody right now in New York. There's happy musicals, there's fabulous plays, there's comedies, there's musicals that tell stories. There's everything. And that's what great theater does. And that's what Days of Wine and Roses had done for so many people, just so you know that. Between the Atlantic and Broadway. But there's always something in New York, and that's the only place you find it is on Broadway. You come from anywhere in the world and come to Broadway, and you can see anything and everything, and that's really great. Yeah. Now, I understand that one of the biggest hurdles for each of you with any acting piece was acting drunk. And you both did this beautifully, seriously, because you watch over the show how it all starts and where it goes to, and it's so believable. How did you each deal with that, and how did you make it seem so real and believable? Because I'm sure it was hard early on during this process.
Yeah. I think, honestly, you just have to act drunk. And then you have to learn that's terrible. That's too much. You just have to find out what is actually believable.
Yeah.
This is kind of weirdly related. I don't know why it's coming to mind, but I did a play with Laura Linney, and the first scene is she's been wounded, and we just started rehearsals, and she can't. I'm ushering her in, and I don't know why I was so amazed, but she had to walk in, with a severe wound on her leg, and she really just went for it, and I was like, wow, wow, that really looks like it hurts, and I was like, oh yeah, she's just acting like it hurts. I may sound like an idiot saying this, but my point is that you just have to do it. You just have to do it, and you do your version of it, and your version of course is informed by my own experiences of being drunk, seeing other people drunk. So that's the broad answer. Some of the technical things that I'll never forget. My acting teacher in college, I remember him talking about ballistics, and when you're inebriated, your ballistics are off, and so when you reach for a cup, the physics of it is inherent in your system, in your brain, in your body, for most people, if you're lucky. And when your ballistics are off, it's just a computation that is off by 6 or 7 points, and therefore you reach too far, and then you spill the drink. So I think that there's success perhaps in that area of finding inebriation. You don't necessarily see the drunkenness per se. Yeah. You see the consequence of what the effect is having on the physical body. And so you see the aftermath and you think, what's up with that person? They could seemingly seem fine, but maybe 1 or 2 things is happening where it just seems like, oh, that person's dancing a little too hard, or that person is talking a little too loud. Those are the things I think that in the mosaic of a piece like this go a long way.
Beautiful. For you, Kelli.
It's a realization I'm having right now that we never really had to play in the show. We never had to play drunk that we were hiding.
Yeah.
And so, I would often tell people who had taken the journey watching the show, we're not having the same journey.
Yeah.
Like, how are you having fun? Because we're not seeing our own demise. You never do. That's the problem. You never see the other people staring at you. You never see the other people noticing, or you don't know you're the elephant in the room, right? So the freedom in that, the joy of dancing on the bed, even the joy of vacuuming and thinking I've got it all together until I don't, the joy of you in the greenhouse until it's a disaster, until your mood starts to change by it. Those things as an actor are incredibly fun and freeing. And one of the reasons why I keep using the word free is because I've never believed so deeply or learned so much about breath as I have in this show. And I don't want to get too technical or even talk about all the secrets, or they're not secrets really, but the effect of where you are in your cycle of breathing can create such magic. I don't know if you've ever taken one of those breathing classes or courses where you literally can start to hallucinate a little bit, with fast breathing or slow breathing or all the breath coming out. Without giving too much away, there's one lyric in the show, I'll never have you let all your breath come out. Adam writes at what he knows. If you're at the very end of your breath, a whole world is actually either given to you or taken away from you. And the whole way you perceive everything in that moment it's life-changing. And it was the most glorious. I could get emotional at it because I can seem inhibited in life. I feel like I call myself an introverted extrovert. I can sit up and talk in front of you, but I get into a room of, colleagues or people, and I'm a little bit like, hey, Brian, what's up? What's up? I just lose all my ability to be who I want to be sometimes because I don't necessarily trust her. And when I'm playing a role, there's a freedom of I'm not me. I'm that. And all the breath comes out, and all of a sudden the words are on the page for me to say, and I don't have to decide what they are. And especially in Kirsten, I didn't have to be perfect for the first time. And most of the roles I play, they need to be perfect. because that's what the perception is, and that's not who I am. And so it was the most, aside from the alcoholism, it was a similar person that I feel like, and if I could breathe a certain way, I could just be free. And I didn't even need any alcohol.
Yeah.
It was the intoxication of that allowance on stage. And sometimes I would be so in it that I would forget a line, which never happens to me. I'd just skip it. On the night, and I try not to pay attention to these things because I desperately don't want to, but the night the times came, which I didn't know until afterwards, because of course they come in and tell you, well, the worst is over, or whatever. I'm like, shut up, get out of here. But that night, I'm like, hey, and then I looked at Byron Jennings, and he's staring at me, and I'm like, he forgot to say his line. And then we get off stage, and I'm like, oh, I skipped that whole part. And it's because in the moment, but it felt great. And it's really breath. It's because I let all my breath out, and then all of a sudden, try it sometime. I've just been trying it right now, and it feels great. Yeah.
Can I say one little thing? Since why not? Because we're talking about it. So we're SAG-AFTRA, right? We're actors. We're talking about the craft, and I would steal a lot of things. I would watch and just kind of make a little notebook of like, oh, that's good, that's great. I want to use that. One thing that I saw during the run of the Broadway version, I watched. I'm embarrassed. I can't remember the name of the movie, but it's a whodunit with Sam Rockwell and Saoirse Ronan. Does anybody know the movie I'm talking about? Yeah, See How They Run. Thank you. So there's this one scene where Sam Rockwell comes out of a pub and he's really drunk, and he misses the curb. The curb goes down. He takes his thing off, and he's super graceful, and he just kind of goes down like this and just goes, whoa. And he comes right back up. I thought, oh my God, that is brilliant. It is so beautiful and so great. So I definitely stole that, and I put that in there. There's a moment in 435 when I see the stool across the stage, and I try to step on the stool, and the stool slips off, and kind of orchestrated that fall based on Sam Rockwell. Please don't sue me.
But isn't that great, though? Because we all learn from other actors, and you see things,
Yeah, if it works, use it.
It works. How emotionally and physically draining were these roles for each of you?
Yeah, we have different answers.
Pretty draining. I found it to be it's just such a tall order technically to get through it and to do it properly, and so it was pretty disciplined about what was required to get enough rest and to go home, not go out, all that stuff. So in that sense, that wasn't draining, but that adds up to be a certain kind of life that is that is not my usual life. That I'm a little bit more open to having a good time. But I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of that the kind of perimeters I set up for myself. But in terms of doing it, and I think I know what you're going to say, but the emotional journey these characters take, it definitely was like scooping out your guts every night. But with that, there's an exhilaration that comes with this is what I signed up for. Yeah. This is why I want to do this. I want to try to be able to be as honest as I can, depicting something or someone in a state of whatever that is going to be true and possibly moving. And this show, there were a lot of moments that were knocking on the door to say, hey, this is what you got to do. So that, to me, the end product was more exhilarating than it was exhausting.
Yeah, apropos of the crazy that just came out of me, which I feel like I am losing my mind a little bit the more I do this. I mean, Broadway is...
What is Broadway?
It's like being an athlete with no holidays, weekends, or off season.
It's like the circus.
It is. It's like there's never. And when you do take a vacation, you literally get letters for the rest of your life that say, "I brought my whole family from Arkansas, and you
ruined our life."
I literally had someone come up to me after a show, and I'm smiling, and they're smiling. I just have to say, I came to see The King and I, and you weren't there. And that was their comment. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Good night. And I came out at Days of Wine and Roses, and I was like, I'm going to go have a drink. No, so you really don't ever get any time off, right? So it is tiring, but my life is like in two. I believe me, I have a lot of friends. I love to socialize, but really for the last 20 years, it's been my family and my children and doing my shows. And it's and I really sort of thrive on the consistent schedule, because when I'm not doing shows, I'm traveling for concerts, or maybe I'm doing television, which is never quite consistent ever. You might have a 16-hour day, and then So I sort of thrive when I get into the schedule, because then I can know exactly what my children need and when I can be with them, and they bring them with me if I can, and that kind of thing. But it develops in me this great sense of schedule, and when I finish the show, yes, which is tiring, but I love to be pushed. I've always loved to, I go running, or and you do too. I mean, it's a big marathon run, but I love to do a yoga class and then come out of it and feel like, like that shavasana at the end of it, where you're tired, but you also feel better and lighter than you have in years. I would come out of every show feeling like I had given my all and given the best of myself. And, I go home and I'm a better mom and a better wife and a better friend. And for me, it's incredibly cathartic. And I developed, and it really started happening in Bridges and King and I keep looking at Rocco because he was one of the children in King and I with me, and now he's this grown man and he's sitting here and I'm going, what? Ladies and gentlemen, Rocco. This is wild. It's I've seen a couple of the kids have come to the show and seen me this year, and they're all, they've all grown up to be these beautiful adults. No, but I developed this thing, and now this is going to be crazy, but I'm going to say it. This sort of active meditation on stage where I'm fully aware, I'm fully present. But in Bridges, I opened a drawer. I was this farm wife, and I saw the contents of my farm wife grandmother's drawer as a child. I hadn't thought about it in 40 years, 30 years. I saw the contents. There was a sugar-free candy because my grandpa had become diabetic. It was like, and these things start to happen for me because if I'm at the end of my breath, if I'm fully present, magical things are happening, and I'm all of a sudden inside this world. And it happened with Kirsten, and it happened with Anna-Leon Owens, and it's this wildly accessible world that happens to me when I'm on the stage. And when I come out of that, I'm just really empty and free, and sort of ringed out in the most glorious way. And so at the end of a night, I'd be tired, but I'd be like, hi, I'd be free. I'd be feeling good. Yeah.
No, but when you've given everything, because these are really tough roles, and you're like, I pushed myself tonight, I did everything I possibly could tonight, and now I'll go home.
Yeah.
Can I tell one really quick story? So this kind of monk life that you live is true. Near the end, the last week of the run, we had one more week, and we knew that we were closing the next week. And so I was like, okay, my guard was coming down a little bit. And I went to Northwestern University. This was during the Final Four of the basketball season, where Northwestern was playing at Barclays. And I thought, oh, this is great. It's a Sunday night. I can go to the game. I got tickets. Me and my buddy, also Northwestern grad, we went, and we went to Gallagher's, and then we were going to go to Steakhouse and go down to the game. And for the first time in the run, I got to the bar with my buddy, sat down, and ordered a Manhattan. This is like, the show's ended 10, 15 minutes ago. I busted over there because we had to get down to the game. Yeah. I sit down, and there's a guy sitting next to me, and I notice he has the Days of Wine and program in his hand. And he's slowly looking at me. He's just staring at me. I see the program. I'm like, oh my God. And then he just points at this and he goes, is this you? And I said, sir, I swear to God, this is the first time I felt so defensive for the product. Like, I'm not a drunk. Like, I don't do the show and then go to Gallagher's and get drunk. And he said, he had a very funny line. He goes, "Don't worry, I've already called the Times. It's in the paper. You're screwed." Anyway.
I actually, during the whole run, I worried if I had a glass of wine on like a Sunday night, or if anybody would see me, and they'd be like, "Oh, that Kelly, she's really, she's going to leave her family."
We're just about out of time, but we have actors here today and actors watching all around the world. I have to ask you about auditioning. Do you like auditioning? Were you always very good at auditioning? And what are the secrets of keeping those voices that all move forward before you go in that door? How did you move the voices back? Or how do you?
I don't know. Well, I developed a skill that I don't know if it was helpful or hurtful. For whatever reason, whenever things would go wrong in an audition, I would not edit myself to make comments about what was going wrong with what I was doing or what was happening in the room. One story that is exemplifies this is, let's see, there's so many. I was auditioning for the Phantom of the Opera, and I chose a song. And while I was doing it, it was my mistake, but the music that I gave the accompanist was kind of accordion, put together. And anyway, this is a short story, I promise. And the music just kept falling off of the thing, and the company was having a hard time playing it. And rather than stopping and helping this person out, I just started singing all of the things that were going wrong. I just moved out of the song and started making up lyrics about, "And the music is falling off the piano, and the accompanist has no idea what to do." I did it for way too long, and people were like, "That's enough. We got to fix this problem." They didn't say that, but that certainly. So that's my superpower.
You do that in real life too. You just start. He'll go off.
I do. I bail and then just go to the absurd.
I'm a disaster. I hate.
Really?
I do like in-person auditions far better. I mean, the filming, putting yourself on tape, it can go to hell. I just really, I don't think you get a feeling. It's too self-conscious. It's in the world of what we're trying to talk about exactly not doing, where you can look at yourself, readjust, do it again, do it a 30th time, look at yourself, judge yourself. I don't even like to look at myself in the mirror sometimes. I don't want to have to do that. I want to emote and be done with it.
Yeah.
I want to be in person, do my thing, and I want to have a conversation with someone. I want to know who you are. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. So, and I also think that it's just shut up. And I also think it's just it's one of those things where, it's just too self-conscious. And I was just going to tell this, just the really quick story that I heard. Being the most different and the most risky you can be is probably the best thing in the world. And I sometimes have trouble doing that. But I heard one time that our friend David Costabile would make a self-tape, and at the end he would just go, "Delicious." And he started booking every job. I heard, is that a wives' tale, or did he do that?
It sounds perfectly true.
It totally does, right? But can you imagine you're like audition for some serious thing on the camera, and then you just stop, and then you go, "Delicious." And the other person on the other end has no choice but to either say, "This guy's a quack," or he says, "That's really ridiculous, and I want to see that guy again." You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, who cares? When you said that, my skin started crawling. Yeah. So enough.
Because I've spoken to every star, and they're like, "I hate it." Because you never know what they're looking for, whatever else. And self-tapes are like, I do it 35 times, and someone's husband or wife will say, "Put that away."
Put that away. But what I tell students with auditioning is this. They want you to be the person because they're so tired, and they've heard "Glitter and Be Gay" for the 90,000th time, whatever it is. But you also have to realize they're people. They're human, fallible, lived people. And the reason I say this story is because I had a girlfriend who was in a class with a teacher, and the teacher was so horrible to her all the time. And this is like a 4 or 5 Broadway career girl, very talented girl. But he was horrendous, and he kept saying, "I can't work with you. There's nothing I can do." Da-da-da. Finally, she quit the class, only to learn years later that she had reminded him of his ex-wife. And so the point of it is, when you go into an audition, you have to just come in and realize there's nothing I can do about you. I'm just going to do the best I can and hope for the best. But today might not be my day, and it might have nothing to do with me. It may have only to do with what you're dealing with or who you've already cast, and I don't fit that, whatever. It's never really about us. It really isn't. There's so many factors that go to play, and we can't control them. So the self-tape thing where you're trying to control every aspect, you may have combed your hair straight and they were really hoping for someone with curly hair. You know what I mean? It's like, so let's just we need to let go.
Is that great advice? So finally, very quickly, if you could sum up the best part of the experience of Days of Wine and Roses, because it was one of the most brilliant things I saw at the Atlantic and then on Broadway, what was it for each of you?
Brian Darcy James. I took it first.
No, it would be weird if I said Brian Darcy James. I don't know. Just going back, this is quick, but just that image of being at the bottom of a mountain and knowing that was the most beautiful mountain you could climb, and just looking at your partner every single night and saying, "All right, we're going to do this." Yeah. And that to me is I don't know. You want to be asked to do something possibly great, and you want to give it your best to try to achieve that. And I feel like that's what we tried to do every night.
Yeah. Well, I have known the two of you from like your first shows in New York, and it's been so wonderful for me as a journalist to watch your careers, just where they have gone to and everything else. But I thank you for taking the time today to sit with me here today, and I love you both.
Thank you, Richie. And thank you all for coming out.
Kelli O'Hara, Brian James.